everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks once again for joining us. My name is Josephine Sunny, and I am a member of the CDD-Ghana communications team. So today's webinar is actually supposed to crown our Democracy Month commemoration. And CDD-Ghana began this whole Democracy Month business last year. We thought, well, since 15 September, Day for Democracy, and democracy and governance is one of our key program areas. We should dedicate the whole month to discussing issues about democracy. Obviously, just one day wasn't enough for us. But today's session is actually more exciting because we are not just talking democracy, we are talking about we are talking to the youth, the young minds about a very important aspect of the future of the country. You know, Afrobarometer, I like data a lot, so forgive me if I bombard you with a few numbers. But a very recent survey, we asked the question, was really intriguing. We asked the citizens if, in order for the country to develop, we should rather listen to the fresh ideas of the youth or the wisdom of the elderly. And the majority of Ghanaians, for Ghana to develop or for the country to develop, we should rather listen to the wisdom of the elderly. What I found more shocking was that we had a majority of the youth, that is those aged between 18 and 35 years, also saying that we should rather listen to the elders. I mean, no offense, the wisdom of the elders is good, but it gave me a lot of like sleepless nights because I felt like, what is it that we understand the power that we do not know how much power there is in our voices, you know? And CDD Ghana has been championing this whole thing about youth inclusion and listening to the voices of the youth and even grooming the youth to become better leaders. So if you follow our programs, you know, we've been doing a lot of things to groom the youth. We have the democracy and governance youth camp that we do for senior secondary school students. Recently, we did the West Africa Youth Fellowship, Youth Leadership Fellowship, and we recently also did the Youth Speaks Forum, that was a platform for the youth to engage with political parties so that they could question the things that were actually in their manifesto with regards to youth inclusion and youth development. So I'm really, really excited today because we have very brilliant young minds that are going to discuss issues of. Or Caleb, how did that man say it was of national interest, right? So I wouldn't talk much. I'm going to hand over to our moderator who really needs no introduction to just set the ball rolling. Thank you once again for joining us.
Just making the point that perhaps CDD and platforms like this one should give more young people like you and I and Azamati, brilliant as you all are, more opportunities to let Ghanaians hear your brilliant ideas. So young people believe in the voices of young people. Maybe we should marry it all. But wherever you are joining us for this webinar, we're excited to welcome you. My name is Kudah. I want to encourage you to share the link you see on Facebook stream. Tag all your friends who are into all sorts of activism, particularly youth, gender, every social sort of activism. Share it, tag them. Let's have a conversation. We'll be excited to share your views. My name is Kudah, and I'm a broadcast journalist at CTFM and CTTV. So this afternoon, we are going to have a very exciting conversation on youth leadership and governance. And to help us do this, we have a very exciting crop of panel members to help us do that. I want to introduce them to you shortly. Let me start with a friend. They're all my friends too, but Ebenezer Azamati at Legon, University of Ghana, where we first met. We called him Azar, right? So basically, he's a student of classical realism, and I will have him explain to us what that means. And then his academic research sits at the intersection of war, real politics, and great powers management of the international order via preeminent international institutions. So he reads for at the MPhil International Relations at the University College at Oxford. Ebenezer Azamati, before joining Oxford, received a BA in Political Science at the University of Ghana. He went on to become a research assistant at the Center for Gender Studies after he graduated. And then he was accepted as a Felix Scholar at SOAS, University of London, to read for a Master of Science in International Politics. And he's been a student activist since his time at the University of Ghana, where he served as Deputy Speaker of the General Assembly. Ebenezer Azamati has been in the news in recent times for very interesting reasons, and we'll find out more in this webinar. Hi, Azamati, you're welcome.
Thanks a lot for the honor, Danny. I'm grateful, and I didn't know all this about myself. Thank you for bringing it up. I thought you hide them, but you'll always go with them everywhere, won't you?
There's more coming, just wait for it.
What else can I say?
Good. So the second member on this panel is Maame Awinador, and she is an international trade consultant for Black Bridge Consulting Group. Her expertise is in international trade law, international economics, international relations, and here's the interesting thing, the law of the sea. I was excited because as I said, some of us have not finished it. To find out that she has expertise in the law of the sea was very exciting to see. She has received her bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Kudah. I hope I got that right. India, and postgraduate honors degree in international relations and politics from the University of Cape Town, South Africa, and politics from the University of Cape Town, South Africa as well. She holds an MPhil in international law from the University of Cape Town. She's an avid writer and the PR and communications lead for the New African Mind. It's an NGO in Ghana. This is my first time interacting with you, but I've followed you and I've seen a lot you've been saying in the media and writing on your social media pages. You are also an activist. Maame, I'm excited to welcome you to this platform.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Right. So the next member of this panel, well, if that sounds well, sometimes there is pepper in what she says because she's a member of the PepperdDem group. She's an advocate, really. Amazing Grace Lois Danso is a young woman passionate about a wide spectrum of Ghana and Africa at large, gender, race, governance, social justice, activism, and faith. She's an active social media enthusiast who engages friends and followers alike across different platforms in posts aimed at educating, inspiring, creating awareness, fighting injustice, keeping various stakeholders, especially governments, accountable in their respective domains and leaving. Amazing Grace, I wanted to disagree with you on because sometimes you clutter us with pictures of very yummy meals that we never can get to eat some.
Sorry, Caleb. One of these days, don't worry, you get to taste them.
I'm looking forward to that, but thank you for joining us, Amazing Grace. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology, counseling, and human development from the Liberty University, and is currently pursuing a degree in law from the University of London. She works with an interesting civil society. Their name is Africa Center for Economic Transformation, ACET. In 2018, they released a very interesting report, Growth with Depth. We'll be referring to some of their work and have a conversation on that. Our final panel member is Ernest Armah. She's the, is Ernest, I'm sorry, I'm very sorry. Ernest is the country manager of Enpact EV, a global non-profit and non-profit that supports startups, organizations, and institutions, international economic cooperation. Ernest has several years of experience in policy analysis, development work, programs development and management, as well as consulting. He's currently managing Pan-African projects related to local economic empowerment and entrepreneurship ecosystems development. Ernest, thank you for having us. We're happy to have you as well.
Hi, Caleb. Great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So guys, I want us to start on a very controversial note because it didn't occur to me that use, the definition of use has a very wide spectrum from different, jurisdictions. So depending on where you are, you may not be a youth or otherwise. Recently, in our political space, someone was started to be a youth. We'll find out what you all think about that. But let me read to you all a very interesting piece of information that I found, and then we can take it off from there. It says defining youth globally according to some exact age range is an awkward task. Why? The age range 15 to 24 is often used by the United Nations and others for statistical purposes. But in many cases, this distinction is too narrow. In some developed countries, for example, the male transition to adulthood in terms of achieving the economic and social stability that comes with steady employment, and this may extend into their late 20s, right? Now, for some men in developing countries who have not completed secondary school, the transition to stable work could take up to around age 35. Therefore, in our African context, a youth ranges between 15 to 35. The ideas of transition from youth childhood is adequately explained from Jordan, blah, blah, blah. We don't need that one. So to further elaborate this, let me give you the age ranges for some countries. If you go to Kenya, your youth, when you're between the ages of 15 to 30, in Nigeria is 18 to 35, in Morocco is 15 to 29. It goes on and on to give you different countries and all. So let me start with Ernest, Armah, right? Who is a youth and how can we find one when we see them?
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to my colleague panelists. Yes, as you've rightly said, it's very difficult to give a very specific definition. The definition of a youth should be reduced to the productive forces that a country or a community has that can contribute meaningfully to the socioeconomic development of that country or community. And so I will not specifically put an age to it. I believe that we've had enough difficulties trying to narrow down who we should call a youth and who we shouldn't. I think the focus should be on who are the productive forces in our country, who are the productive forces in our community that we can leverage to move forward our economic development. And so for me, that's the definition that I find most comfortable and suitable for our context.
In other words, you agree with those who say being a youth is a state of mind? Is that correct? Do I quote you correctly by saying you agree with
Well, absolutely, because youth connotes energy, and anything that you see which has energy that's able to push and make things happen, and that needs the necessary supportive systems to be able to do more than it currently is doing or its potential allows for. So, as I said initially, I will not restrict myself to a chronological definition of youth. I will look at the productive forces.
Right. Ernest, thank you. We'll come back to you shortly. Luckily for us, two of our panel members have studied some psychology, Amazing Grace and Maame. So do you all agree with Ernest when he says that let's take off this age range tag on who a youth should be, and let's just see anyone who is in his productive years and see them as youth? Maame, do you want to take that first?
So maybe that it makes some sense, but because we live in an organized society, it can have some nuances, especially in the context of Africa. We've seen this play out with even soccer when people go in what they call football years. And so the idea of having to even retire or let the next generation take over is very difficult, considering the kind of history we've come from, where people have felt deprived from certain opportunities or felt underprivileged. So when they get a chance to have some level of privilege, whether it's influence or power, it becomes hard to let it go. And so I think that Ernest is right, but I would say that because we live in an organized society, we need to be able to have something more structured to regulate that. And so I would say, fundamentally, I would say that they could increase the cutoff year to, I think there was even a discussion, people say, okay, life begins at 40, right? But I would even say 45 could be a good cutoff point, because there has to be a point where in any structured society where you can say that youthfulness ends here, because we've seen even with the Ugandan president having to prove constantly that he's still young by jogging, doing push-ups.
Exactly. Interesting.
Sorry?
Exactly. I was just corroborating your point.
Right, yes. So I think that because you live in a structured society, yes, it's great to look at the inherent nature of a person, but fundamentally, for there to be structure, for there to be an amount, a sense of even change for the next generation to be able to hand over, for people to even be able to be real with the fact that they can't be in a place for too long, or they can't, even if they feel young in their mind, their bodies are also changing. So I would say that I would give it a cutoff point to at least 40 to 45. So that's my 2 cents.
Interesting. I'm coming to you, Amazing Grace, now. So do you agree, or you have a divergent view? 45 from 18 or 20 or 15? Can you clarify that before we go to Amazing Grace, Maame?
Yes. Okay. Oh no. So yeah. With the in terms of the youthfulness, yes. So fundamentally, I think that I would even say, from to be more realistic, let's say even because of the way our world is developing so quick, I would even say from 20. It's going to sound very controversial, but I'll actually say from 25, just because I had a better sense of self around my early 20s. And I know that, like, and people will say, okay, if I'm 18, I'm not a child anymore. But you'll be very surprised that I felt like I didn't have a good sense of self till I reached my early 20s. So, yeah, I think.
This one there,
I
Amazing Grace disagrees. Amazing Grace disagree for me.
Oh, well,
25 is too late. Like,
yeah, for me, you see, I track with a lot of what Maame is saying, in terms of the fact that we live in a very organized society. Even the fact that we have a retirement age on the books, where at a certain point you have to step away from the active work, goes to support that point that she's making. I don't know whether I would say the cutoff point should be 45. It's like Ernest suggested, it's quite difficult to measure these things with a certain time bandwidth. So it's hard for me to outrightly disagree with Maame and say 45 should be a cutoff point, because I see the rationale behind that. But I think, like Ernest was saying, we need to focus more on driving, seeing who is driving the productivity in our nation, right? And how to support them. Because when you look at youth, we are looking at the people at that awkward transition from childhood into full-blown adulthood and maturity and all that comes with that. So yeah, Caleb, I'm sorry if I can outright disagree with her on your behalf, but I do find discomfort in using clear markers to say, okay, 50 ends youth. And going back to the point about psychology and the state of mind, thinking that can get dangerous, citing the Mussolini example.
yeah.
If someone
I was only concerned to start the bandwidth from 25 to 45. I felt like we could do it much earlier, like say 16 or 15 or maybe 18 to be safe.
Yeah, I think I don't know where to cut it off, but at least I think we can start even earlier than that, because you meet a lot of 15, 16-year-olds who may not necessarily know who they are completely, but they have some cognition of how society works and functions, and can actively contribute to that. So from that perspective, I'll say youth definitely should start much earlier than 25.
Interesting. Let me come to Ebenezer Azamati to pick your thoughts on who a youth is, whether or not we should put a cap on the ages, and or you think that it's a state of mind. Once you feel fit, you're good to go.
Mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. why do we need age range to define whether someone is a youth or an adult?
Right.
What do we need that classification for? How will that classification be helpful to our organization as a human society? These are the core questions that I would ask before attempting an answer to your question as to who qualifies to be classified as youth. For me, it's not about how old you are that matters. It is about how much you can contribute to society, how much you still have under your sleeves that if you are allowed the opportunity, you can give to us. Okay. It is about how creative the mind is, how innovative is the mind. Because in the long run, all that matters, I mean, there are two things that matter most: what the brains can do and the outcome of what the brain is doing. Is it helpful? Look, we can classify people under 10 to be youth. If they are not adding anything to society, classification is irrelevant.
Okay.
And the whole argument that life should start, youth should be classified from the age range of 18 to 40, 25 to 35, 25 to 45, etc. For me, it cannot be a constant argument to be made. And I say this for a couple of reasons. The first one is the world is not static. The world is moving. Today, what a 30-year-old man could do 70 years ago, a 17-year-old could do more than that. Thanks to what we have that has added, mainly technology, mainly the sharing of ideas, mainly the fact that the world has become a global village, that what someone can do miles and miles away, another person sees that and begins to tune his or her mind towards that. I think, for me, age range, classifications based on age range, yes, they help in the organization of society and etc. But in the long run, what qualifies as youth is just a social construction.
Okay.
It's society's construction.
Sounds exciting. Thank you all. That was a very exciting take-off. I'll come back to this question very shortly. Please hold on for me. But guys, let's talk about leadership now, because we're talking about youth leadership and governance. And I want you all to tell me what your view of leadership is. And one thing I am grateful for is that all of you, almost all of you, my panelists, have had world experiences, have had different worldview or experiences with different parts of the world. So we are going to talk about leadership from what it means to you and how that can affect the life of young people. So from your own experiences, what is leadership and how important is it? Let me start from Maame this time.
Yeah, so for me, fundamentally, I think leadership is service. And so it's, I mean, I don't know how the best word to use apart from that. And so I think it's just the call to serve. And leadership doesn't necessarily even start with a specific position or hierarchy, but it's the idea of serving in even if wherever you find yourself. So the call to serve anybody and everyone. But then obviously because of the society that we live in, then we have issues of hierarchy that come in, not issues, sorry, but for structure. And so the whole thing is that it's just the idea that once you have a heart to serve and to make a difference in the society, then obviously, you know, we have issues like things like going to government, all of those things. But the core fundamental idea of being a leader is being able to serve people and to pretty much not like let go of self, but to be able to put the needs of others, you know, before the self. And so that's what I would say.
Sounds exciting. I remember your tenant attitude theory on
right, yes.
I think we should just rope in the governance so we can take up from there. Once we're done taking youth, leaders, governance, then we can find a way of mixing the Yokagari together, you see. So add your view of governance to leadership for me, and I'll come back to a question for all of you.
Okay. Well, so I mean, fundamentally, if you look at governance, you're looking at having some level of structure of how leadership should be administered, how a society should function. And so at the end of the day, yes, we can all be leaders, but then decisions have to be made in every sphere of life or in different sectors. So with governance is the fundamental, it's actually now taking leadership and forming different institutions, right? And to be able to help structure, organize, or help society to be more organized in one way or the other. And so how does the service, it's just service finding itself in different forms. So whether it's service, whether it's in the finance space, or it's service, whether you are in the agriculture space. But at the end of the day, it's all, the governance is the idea of having these institutions having an institution or different institutions coming to serve and help society be more organized or be more functional. But the fundamental idea of having all of these institutions is service. And so we have the idea of civil servants and being a minister, which also means service. So.
But with all that I'm hearing, I'm wondering why Ghanaians still think that we shouldn't include the voice of young people, but we should just run the country so much on the wisdom of the elderly. But that's just on the side. Let me come to you, Amazing Grace, for leadership and governance. What your view is of these two?
Okay, yeah, I think Maame pretty much captured the fundamental bit of it, which is being of service to society. And roping in governance, this is where you get to work towards improving lives for the collective. So you take that service attitude and apply it to the fact that we're trying to make lives better for everybody. You know, sometimes in taking these decisions, we tend to neglect the ones that they are to benefit. For example, the most marginalized in our societies. So persons with disabilities, women, the youth, as we're discussing today, those who don't have access to resources. How are we working to improve their lives? So my perspective of governance is one where we put human beings at the center of every decision that we take and every decision that we make. Those who know me know I favor a more socialistic worldview where we all work together to make life equitable and fair and livable for the average person, and not just a concentrated few who hold all the resources and power. So these are usually my perspectives on leadership and governance.
That's true. In introducing you, I almost said you are with her because those who know you're with her. Like, you know, like it's a good one. But Azamati, are you there? What are your views of governance and leadership? Because so far I'm hearing structure, functionality for governance. I'm hearing putting human beings at the center, improving the lives of everyone, and then leadership being more service. Again, from your experience and your worldview, leadership and governance, what does that mean? What is it?
There's obviously no single definition to some of these very broad terms. Yeah. But what are the core features we are looking out for in these two core terms? Service. What is the leader there to do? He's there to serve. What is the leader there to do? He's there to listen. What is the leader there to do? He is there to take responsibility. What is the leader there to do? The leader is there to also steer the affairs of whatever human organization or institution he is in charge of. These things make up what we call leadership. There is nothing like a leadership if any of these things is not present. If you have three and it's even short of one, there's no more leadership. It becomes a captaincy. And a captaincy is different from a leadership. If someone is captaining, is being a captain of a ship, or a captain of a ship, basically you realize that 99% of what he's doing is he exerting his control. And of course he has crew and all that, but how many times does he listen to the crew? A leader must listen, must serve, must take responsibility, and must steer the affairs where necessary.
Right.
all the time. These things must be present. Governance then comes in when the leader and leadership or whatever, when leadership must now ensure that there is a proper functioning structure that goes through a daily or a routine process, and change should be at the core. Immediately we realize that something is not going well, governance must adapt. So in the long run, you have a leadership and good governance if you have an adaptable institution that is able to go through life's processes, and of course, as Maame said, putting the human beings at the center, because without them, there's nothing like governance. You can't go and govern sheep. They govern themselves.
Sounds
at
good.
best, all you need is a shepherd. So human beings must be at the center. And of course, it has to be said that when human beings are at the center, then there are leaders who are equally humans and then followers. But it has to be said that whilst leaders are taking responsibilities, obviously followers must also take responsibilities and be obedient where necessary and challenge where necessary, because there's nothing like leadership if at the end of the day it's only one person or a few people who are speaking and they don't listen to anyone or anything. And of course, as followers, we must also take responsibility if there's going to be anything like leadership and governance.
Great, thank you. You introduced a new term, which is followership, and you add responsible followership to that. We'll interrogate these as we go on. Let's wrap up on this definition tangent with Ernest. Pick your view, and then I come back to ask you all one very pressing question in my heart. Ernest, leadership governance.
Well, Caleb, thank you once again. I would define leadership as focusing on what needs to be done and getting it done. And when I relate this definition to our current governance regime, I believe that the principles which brought our constitutional democracy to life are timeless and will forever remain relevant. However, the context have changed. And let me use the source of our democracy, that is the 1992 Constitution, to illustrate my point. It is true that the 1992 Constitution has proven to be the most enduring, and even some constitutional law professors consider it to be one of the best documents in the world. But most of us will also agree that our constitution is not a perfect. I think what makes the 1992 Constitution work, despite its many deep flaws, is not only the text therein that safeguards our rights and freedoms, is also the process which led through it. The process was inclusive and decentralized. Ghanaians from all walks of life, young of a foundation that will guarantee their good work. So I believe there are two important leadership lessons here for us. First, because the older generation saw what autocracy or military rule looked like, they were therefore committed to change. And second, they were actively, not cosmetically, involved in the making of a new governance regime that will change their lives for the better. It is these two critical factors which I think are missed in our current democratic practice. And so if we want to define leadership, if we want to have a clear understanding of what leadership entails as related to our current governance structure, you can see that we clearly have a situation where people are not focused on what needs to be done. So what needs to be done is not getting done because the focus is not there.
Focus is not there. Thank you for that. Let me take you all back to our definition of youth, whether age is important, whether or not we should put a cap on that. And let you all know that Africa has the youngest population, right? So Africa has the youngest population globally, but we have some of the oldest leaders. Okay, I'm told as of 2016, we had about 1.2 billion. Now, 2013, well, Lomita tells me we're about 1.3 billion people. And if you look at the number of people, young people, let me take my time and share this with you. It says the median African leader is age 62. Okay. The average African leader is 62 years old and is 8 years older than the median OECD leader. We're talking about some of these very developed countries. They are always like 8 years older than the average OECD leader. Now, if you look at it, it says furthermore, the gap between the region's population and leaders is 42 years compared to only 12 for OECD. The gap between the average population of the people and that of their leaders in our part of the world is 42, and elsewhere is 12. We talk about leadership, governance, we're all talking about structure, human-centered service, functionality, and all of that. And the reason why I said I'm excited, many of you have lived in different parts of the world, is now I want you to compare, okay, the quality of life you've seen elsewhere to what you see here, and let's have this conversation about whether or not, you know, the youthfulness of the leadership of a people matters in a sort of energy and service they can render to the people. And Ernest, you talked about focus. Is there anything that makes people more people-centered when they are younger or older? Because we all can share our experiences when it comes to the quality of roads we drive on, the schools we go, we attend, the food we eat, the quality of air we breathe, the trees around. If you look at all that in totality and compare that to elsewhere, access to education and its quality, let's have a conversation on this, whether or not youthful leaders make for more efficient, you know, governance structure or something like that. Let me start with you, Amazing Grace.
This question, I want to take it from the perspective of how have we prepared our youthful populations, right? Because if I compare it to when I lived in the US during my high school and university years, what I can say is when I was in the US, I felt like I could be a leader because the way the education system prepared me gave me a sense of confidence, gave me a sense of power, knowing that there is power in my hands, right? How do we educate in our part of the world? Are children especially allowed to freely express themselves? Are they allowed to foster their sense of curiosity? Are they made to feel like they can be a part of the process? Or do we sort of dismiss them or beat them down with a lot of our ageist approaches to some of these things? Like we say, you wait till you get older before you can do X, Y, Z. But when I went in another direction, another country, I was told, no, you can do it now in spite of your age. And we're going to give you this type of support in the kind of education we afford you, the kind of resources that we make available to you at your disposal. When we don't tackle these things, it's not surprising that a lot of youth don't feel like they deserve to be a part of the process. I think that's a big challenge that we're having in this country. A lot of you don't feel prepared, they don't feel ready, they don't feel equipped with any tools, any resources. And so the idea of them taking up the mantle of leadership now is a frightening one. They would rather cede that kind of power and control to those who are ahead of us, the elderly. That's why to me, it's not really surprising that the Afrobarometer survey that you referenced much earlier in the conversation showed that a lot of youthful people actually think we should allow the elderly folks their wisdom to keep directing and navigating our system as it is now. So I think we should do the hard work of preparing the youthful populations right from the very lower levels and shaping them with a mindset that they can be leaders, that this country belongs to them. And the older people, I'm sorry to say, your time is quite short, right? Within the next 20 years, a lot of the people who currently lead us will be long gone. This is not to frighten anybody, it's just the reality. What are we inheriting when they depart? So rather than wait for them to depart before we get to that process, it's part of their responsibility, those who are currently in power, to pull the younger people along. How are you mentoring and raising a generation to succeed you?
Okay.
And maybe sometimes they don't do that because they themselves may not be succeeding in this whole leadership and governance thing that we're talking about. You know, how well have they done? I think sometimes we need to look at that angle as well. Let us assess them. What have they done right? And where are they failing? And if they close the gaps to where they're failing, it becomes easier to bring the next generation on board in going for better outcomes in the future.
Thank you. Let me come to Azamati. You're currently in the UK studying. Amazing Grace says we are not equipping our youth enough. We're not preparing them well enough. When she was in the UK, she felt she could do anything as a leader. She felt ready. But back at home, you had to hold on for someone else to do something else. When you look at the quality of an African graduate, someone who is in graduate school actually, and you compare it to someone who is in your kind of institution now, you're in Oxford now. When you compare, let me just make it simple. Ofa Lego, will be your masters and a PhD will Lego. You see, I know the tutonia, or maybe I wanna. What would you say is their kind of approach to the concept of leadership and governance?
If I take Legon and Oxford, well, to be honest, they are two different institutions, and also then one has been there for years and years, has experience, and the other one just for 70 years. But to be honest, to be very honest, my 4 years in Legon was a waste of time.
What?
If I had done my undergraduate at Oxford, I would never have bothered myself to even do a postgraduate degree.
Azar, are you saying that the 4 years we spent at Lagos was a waste of our life?
It's a waste of time. Yeah, for mine, it's a waste of time. I don't know for other people, but for me, I can say it's a waste of time. No, and I only have the chance to say this because I have been lucky enough to experience what happens elsewhere. Look, Caleb, in Legon, we were taught to listen to lecturers. We were not allowed to question. We did not question enough. We did not even have the materials available. And even those we had available were years and years and years expired. We were not even taught to read. You had professors who literally told you to reproduce what they have given you in notes. If you deviated from that, they were going to mark you down. But you see, Kate here, a young undergrad, goes to the classroom having thousands of questions on mind. And the professor sits down one-on-one, listens to the student. The professor doesn't come to the class with an already prepared note saying going from A to B, B to C to D and all that. No. So even on that level, you are first taught how to interact properly with those who are older than you, and then not just how to interact properly, how to question. Look, we can have all the preparation, but if you don't question, it amounts to nothing. One of the what the slogan for philosophy students here at Oxford is question until you don't have a brain anymore. Keep questioning everything. But you see, in our part of the world, gerontocracy is the order of the day. So the old man says something, even though what he's saying is wrong, you are taught to say, well, you have to listen to him. Listen to him and nothing else. Don't question. We need to question. Until we question, we will not know. And that is why we don't feel prepared, because if you don't question, you don't know. As long as you remain ignorant, you feel like you're not ready to take up anything. Right. That is one. And two, the whole idea of this person has lived enough, he has a lot of experiences and all that, for me, has outlived its usefulness. Seneca said something. Lucius Annius Seneca Jr. said something that if you have lived long on earth, it does not necessarily transcribe to you living life. There's a difference between existing long on earth and living life on earth. And that is why, however many years you live on earth does not matter. It is what you are able to do with that number of years on earth that matters. For me, if someone will be a leader of our country, long as that person is responsible enough to take up leadership position and understands what leadership means and is ready to mantle a great leadership that would move our country forward, age shouldn't matter. Obviously, if I say this, it doesn't mean that a 12-year-old can take up leadership in our country. No, a 12-year-old might not have even finished high school at the time. But I'm saying that.
Azamati, I'll drill things down a bit for you. Compare the quality of life you experienced back at home here in Ghana to where you are now. One, as a visually impaired person, moving around as a student of Ghana's premier university to where you are now. And let me know, most important, I know there are different jurisdictions, the democracy, the dispensations are different and all of that, but what can you put your fingers on that has affected you directly because of the quality of leadership that you have had in those two different dispensations? I want you to agree and drill it down.
All right. So here, you are judged by the content of your capabilities. When I was in Ghana, I was judged by the content of my condition. What do I mean? In Ghana, when someone sees you as a blind person or a visually impaired person, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, we're crowded, he's here to beg, or he can't do anything. I remember the other time when there was a newspaper publication, a news item on me that I had gotten a place at PhD, blah, blah, blah. Someone forwarded the Ghana Web article to me, and then under the comments, someone wrote, so this one, what can he come and do? And I sat down and asked myself, really? This is a country I come from. Someone from this country is asking me, what can I come and do after a PhD? Because I can't see. Can you imagine? In my own university, when we were applying for national service, I applied to a place to do my national service. I went there, took my letter there with my degree attestation letter and everything with my transcript. And all the criteria they were looking for, I met all those criteria. Okay. When I entered the secretary's office, I submitted my letter to her saying that I'm here to submit for the application for a place as a national service person. The secretary told me point blank, you cannot do what we do here. And note, the position I was applying for was a research assistant position as a national service person. I was told I can't do, I thought I didn't hear the woman right, so I asked again. She repeated herself all too well, that you cannot do what we do here. I asked her, could you explain? She said she wouldn't explain. In the long run, someone I know from my class who had, and in this, I'm not saying this because I feel I'm better than anyone or anything, but someone who did not meet the criteria fully, had a lower class than I did, was taken for the job. Of course, I'm not saying that I should have been taken only because of my class, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, at least receive my letter. If you had called me for an interview and I could not perform at the interview, that is when you could tell me that I did not qualify. But in this case, you hadn't even received my letter. You only saw me as a blind person being led in by someone else. And you told me that I cannot do what they do here. Fast forward, come to Oxford. When you come to Oxford, the point is, you are judged by your capability. Everybody's given the same task. If you can do it, you do it properly. And also, equity is important. You have to make sure that fairness. So somebody can see, another person cannot see. What does that person who cannot see need to be able to perform as well as that person who can see? That is what happens here. So you are provided all the things you need as a student to be able to function. Look, in Lagos, there were, any of you that has been to a Kwafu hall before, I fell in a fountain at a Kwafu hall, coming from a class and walking alone. All because nobody cared for the fact that there are blind students on campus, and hence drains have to be at least covered, or there should be small walls around them to protect them from falling into them. The number of times I felt in open drains in Lagos, I cannot count in my 4 years. But here in Oxford, I can move from my room to the library at any point in time and walk back at any point in time, because I'm not afraid that I'm going to be falling in open drains or someone is going to hit me with a car, because there are signposts and things around indicating that there are blind people on campus. So you have to drive carefully and all that. You have computer softwares, you have technology, adaptable technology for disabled people, and all those things. So in short, they judge you by the content of your capability, and they make sure that you're able to explore that capability fully by providing the core things you need for you.
Are these developments that you can point to leadership and governance in any way? I wanted you to connect that.
Yes, I will.
Of your life to the kind of leaders and the kind of structures they put in place to ensure functionality.
Yes, I can connect them in the sense that in this part of the world, I think it was Maame who said it, that humans are put at the center of governance. Right. And leaders focus on humans. Leaders do not focus on what they will get after delivering a service. They focus on what our followers would get and how it would be beneficial to them.
Okay.
See, so when the Vice Chancellor of Oxford is looking forward to doing something for students in Oxford, what she asks herself first is, how are my students going to benefit? Okay. How does this policy place the students of Oxford at the center of the entire governance structure of Oxford? But elsewhere, it is how much I'm going to earn, or who I'm going to be introduced to, and what job I'm going to get, what position I'm going to get. That is the center of governance and leadership in our part of the world, unfortunately. So in the long run, you have student leaders who ask, if I sign this contract, how much am I getting back as kickback? Okay. It's not about how much is this contract going to deliver to the students who have elected me to serve them.
We need a whole day to have a conversation, but thank you for that input. I have some of your comments. I'll be sharing them with you shortly, but let me come to Ernest, right? Because you have been with Odikro, right? And you have worked in Parliament. You've looked as a CSO pressure group, more like giving us feedback and giving MPs some pressure and all. Recently, there was news item about the quality of young MPs who have made entry into Parliament. And then I want to connect that to access into governance for younger people. Only yesterday, the Electoral Commission of Ghana made us understand that if you want to be the presidential flag bearer candidate for any political party, the ticket goes for like 100,000 Ghana cedis. 1 billion. Okay. And if you want to be an MP, that's like 10,000 Ghana cedis. For those who don't get it, 100 million. All right. So I'm looking at access for younger people who have the passion, who have the drive, who have the energy, who will put people at the center of leadership. And the cap we are putting on their access. And then the quality, the argument about, oh, even the new ones who have come, the young ones, or Parliament, we don't hear anything. So let's keep the older ones. And that kind of conversation. Ernest, what have you seen from your work in Parliament so far? I mean, from your time in Parliament, work there. Our time is running, I know, but let's pick your question.
Right, thank you, Caleb. What I've seen so far strongly suggests to me that indeed leadership doesn't operate in a vacuum. Leadership operates within the confines of a value system. and leaders respond to what a system values. It's as simple as that. I believe that the days when young people and young men, young women have to climb long stairs to be validated and accoladed are gone. We are in an era where people learn by doing and people grow by being given real life responsibilities. The barriers that we have erected on the path of young people in accessing their aspirations and living their dreams are barriers that are informed by past experiences. If it took some people 20 to 40 years to be able to get certain things, the conditions are no longer relevant in these present times. What young people need currently, more than ever, is a platform for self-expression. They need platforms, they need avenues that will allow them to contribute their quota to national development wherever they are.
I was saying, let's drill it down to Parliament and the quality of young MPs, the kind of work they put there. Does this justify arguments that we should keep older MPs because they have all the experience and the young people?
It doesn't justify anything. As I explained initially, there is an incentive that weakens MPs. And that's what I explained by showing that leaders tend to respond to the values that the society rewards. MPs choose not to be in parliament, not because ordinarily they enjoy doing that, but it's because they are getting better rewarded attending to other things. And so if you have a parliament where for 28 years, I'm saying that what we've seen over the years is admonishment from speakers of parliament to MPs to put on good conduct and change their ways without proper sanctions taken against. What would you expect? These young MPs we are talking about went and then met that system. You expect them to change that system? No, it's a system they went to meet. And so the point is they are responding to what our parliamentary culture values. MPs who double as ministers of state have been chronically absenting themselves. The speaker has spoken about it severally. What has happened to them? Nothing. And we expect these young MPs to change suddenly. It goes back to the example that I believe Ebenezer was talking about. Different environments, you get different results depending on what the incentives and the values are. So that is what we are saying. It has nothing to do with the intrinsic, intrinsic values of the individual MPs, but they are in the system that compels them to act in a certain way.
Okay.
And so it's the results that's unfolding before us.
We'll wrap up on this particular angle, and I'll bring it to access and then ask Amazing Grace for her thoughts on this one. And we'll close the conversation entirely on unemployment, because in CDD's Afrobarometer survey sometime last year, it had found out that many young Ghanaians found education and unemployment as their biggest problems. And Maame, you have been in trade and law, international stuff, so I'll come to you on ACTA and what opportunities it portends for young people, leadership and governance. You see that we'll connect it like that. But Amazing Grace, is it a fair thing for the EC to tell us that it has increased the to 100,000 Ghana cedis, and then for MPs 10,000, bearing in mind that we have a female presidential candidate? We will be having about two of them. We have Bridget Jogbanuku for the PPP, we have Nana Konedu Rajiman Rollins for the NDP, okay? And then as much as we are trying to push a lot more young people into places of leadership and governance, politically, civic, and all of that, are we buying young people out of leadership in the public space?
Absolutely. We are, when I say we are referring to the EC is actively excluding people from leadership because they haven't given any sound justification for these exorbitant types of fees. Why does a publicly funded institution, right, being run on taxpayer money, why do they need to have such high fees to allow people to become president or become MPs or government officials in this country? It makes absolutely no sense to me. What do they need the money for? Unless it's meant to be an exclusionary tactic. That goes back to what I was saying earlier about concentrating power in the hands of the few well-resourced who already have too much access to that power. So this is a move I am very unhappy about. There is no need to increase these prices. We should rather work to make them cheaper to afford a lot of people the opportunity to put their names forward. And I'm glad you mentioned the female presidential candidates, right? We know that traditionally women and other disadvantaged groups don't tend to have the kinds of resources that powerful men do, right? So that's a big hurdle that keeps them from even wanting to stand for any kind of office of service in this country. So putting in these kinds of restrictions by having such a large cap on the fee is going against this newfound, I guess, aspiration that we have to see more and more women, people with disabilities, people who are not as well resourced get that opportunity to serve this country as well. Let's even talk about the affirmative action bill. It's still in Parliament. It hasn't been passed. How are you getting half of the population, right, to have their good say in this country when we haven't done enough to make sure they are well represented in the positions of power where the decisions are made? So this thing about access, we need to really drill down on it and do away with some of these tactics that seek to exclude people.
Thank you. Our time is running out, and I just want to know, besides being unhappy, Amazing Grace says she's unhappy, but for all of you who are joining us for this webinar, or anyone want to join any movement that will insist that the EC reviews the cap or the cost of running for any political party or running for Parliament, I would like to know your views on this one. Please share your views. Let's know if you'd be interested in any movement that will want to push or put some pressure on the system for such a thing to be done. Maame, I'm coming to you now. We're talking about unemployment, and I found some staggering statistics here that if I'm able to find, I'll share. Let's talk about unemployment. Let's talk about the youth. How is leadership governance coming together to fill the people of our side of the world when it comes to job employment, or perhaps we are failing ourselves? My question is very, prejudiced, obviously, because our unemployment rates are not too positive or impressive.
Your question is, how are leaders coming together to deal with the unemployment? Is that your question?
Yeah. To what extent can we blame leadership and governance for the level of unemployment we see?
I mean, so because we are trying to move to a place, I think even because of this kind of platform, we don't want to move from a place of being victims, but how can we move to a place of change or development? I'll say that yes, it is a fact that our leaders haven't made the best decisions, and we become kind of pretty much we are experiencing the repercussions of that. But then is it a hopeless case where we can say, because if we talk about who's to blame, then we're going to feel well, guess what, we're helpless again. But one thing I'm going to say is that we spoke about unemployment, and we know about the AFCFTA, that is a continental free trade area. I know that time is fast spent, so I cannot begin to break it down, but I'll encourage anybody who wants to know more about it to read about it. But the whole idea of the AFCFTA is to promote trade, because Africa has moved from a place where we go through development through aid and loans to trading ourselves out of poverty. And that is when you begin to now think of how you can empower your people to help themselves. And so when you're talking about looking at what is the hope for anybody listening or for the young people, I would say it's collaboration. Yes, our educational system hasn't given many people the needed skills to do what they want to do. But I would encourage you that if you do have any skill whatsoever, at this point in time, you're going to wait for government who will always feel helpless. But I think this is a time to ask yourself that, hey, are you good at marketing? Find 5 other friends who are good at that and do something together. entrepreneurship means solving problems. And maybe, yes, we are waiting for institutions to come up to give us jobs. But let's also face the fact that even when these foreign investors come and set up companies, what kind of jobs do they even give to the locals? So we are thinking, how do you now become the change you want to see? Because you can talk about the leaders, and I know some of our leaders have gone to some of the top schools, whether it's Oxford or Harvard, and they come into the same system and perpetrate the same thing. So the big question is that, is it the institution or is it the people? But guess what? Systems are shaped by ideas. It's a mindset. So at the end of the day, if we want to change the system, we have to change our minds, how we think. So as young people sitting on this platform, looking at unemployment, what is the best way forward? Is to say to yourself, in whatever you are good at, try to like develop it and actually find people who are also doing the same thing. See how you can work together. Let's collaborate to change, you know, the narrative, to change our future. And as we are collaborating, as we are doing things for ourselves, we will see that even the environment begins to change because we are changing individually. Because if you are waiting for your president to change, mind you, you're going to go into that same place and replicate the same mistake you were angry about. But if you begin to see your leader as a reflection of yourself, because he's also a product of the same society, because culture and institutions, they go hand in hand. And the values are shaped by the families that we come from, the mentality. So beginning to become the change you want to see, to end with that, and to say that let's collaborate. Is it farming? Change the way you think about agriculture. We all don't have to go sit in an office. A lot of people are sitting in offices and cannot even pay their bills. Change the way you manage money, your finances. Read about investment, about T-bills. Get informed, and then let's collaborate together to bring the change that we want to see. And let's become that change by becoming the values we want to see, and not seeking so much to say, what can they do differently? But maybe what can I do differently in the process? So that's what I want to end with.
Sounds exciting. So there's a call here, a clarion one at that, for us to, as young people, look at what can we do differently? What can we offer, instead of always looking forward to what we deserve, what is owed us, what we must get, and stuff like that. Thank you, Maame, for that point. Well noted. I've received so many of your comments. I will be sharing some of them with you shortly. You can also share your questions as well for the panel, and we would like to put it to them for them to answer for us. But in the meantime, let me just bring you some of the questions you have, some of the comments you have brought us so far. Leadership and the leader are two sides of the same coin that depends entirely on the available space and the powers that are in the interest of everyone. A sense of responsibility, decision-making, sacrifice, and leadership is a gift and innate that must be presented to everyone by all its modern means. This is from Charles. Charles, thank you. A child must crack the shell of a snail, but not that of a tortoise. African proverb. This is coming from Charling Bello. Please, can you explain that proverb? Okay, Charles. Is that Charles or Charling? We'll try and see. It cements what amazing grace. Okay, so it's not a question. You're saying it cements what amazing grace is saying. People in Africa don't expect much from the youth. This is coming from Vincent Eduji Dawo. Thank you, Vincent. I believe leadership is something that we learn as we go in life, the way we are brought up at home, the kind of leadership we experience and have seen over the years from childhood, most importantly, affects the way we are going to take up leadership responsibilities. And this transcends, it goes down to the way African countries are led. This is coming from Dorcas Amionu. Thank you for sending in that one. Azamati, you've got a lot of love over here. A lot of people are agreeing with you. Always a strong voice of challenge and reason. Thanks for your wisdom, insightful points, Azamati. You got that one come in. So good. That's for you. If your questions come in, I'll put them through for us to get some answers. In as much as we admit Africa in general is addressing basic economic and development challenges, why does East and Central Africa are far ahead of others? Why is it that East and Central Africa is far ahead of the rest of us? What are their leaders getting right? This is a question that Cyril Nkuma is asking. Maame, do you have any thoughts to share on this one? You've been after in-house analyst?
He's saying that Central and East Africa. I wouldn't necessarily say that. Actually, people even there think that we are doing amazingly well. I mean, I know that East Africa, one thing is that Kenya has a big economy, so they've been doing tremendously well in the East. But Central Africa, these are all rich states, but the only problem is that the governance has caused problems for their economy. So when you say East Africa, I just want to clarify that one fundamental thing is that Kenya is one of the main places that is doing extremely well. But Central Africa has been struggling more, especially because of the resources and conflicts and stuff. So when you say getting it right, I don't know. But one thing I know Kenya has been doing is also, really supporting young businesses. I've seen a lot of the youth are so proactive. I was telling someone, like, especially with it in the tech space. And if you engage with any young Kenyan, they'll tell you that. So Kenya, obviously, the economy, having a huge market is important, and that's what helps the country. But since you're on a youth platform, what I will say is that I have learned from engaging with young Kenyans is that they are very ambitious. They are go-getters. And I'm sorry, I'm going to bring this down to everyday life, but let's say you engage with the average Ghanaian woman, maybe in her 20s or young guy. The first thing is thinking, okay, how can I get a job and get married? You meet a Kenyan, they're asking you, they want to go to school, they want to achieve this, do their PhD. So you realize that the priorities are very different. And so when you want to think of how can we do better here, we need to begin to shift what our priorities are. Understanding that the things that we look at as having value, like in terms of whether it's having a job and stuff, you have to look at it in the context of, is it going to build the economy, the kind of family you have? So I think when we begin to think of family life, jobs as attached to Ghana's economy, we can make different decisions. But I think people look at themselves different, disassociated from Ghana sort of. So how can I have a family and a house and then get a job? But what about how my dreams, how my goals, whether it's having a family, settling down, how those things shape your country. So that will make us more proactive to understand that we can aspire for more. We must. And our economy and our country will do much better as we are aspiring for more. The more you aspire for, things like your quality of life will automatically improve. And so that's one thing I can say that Kenya is doing, share with the young people, and I want to encourage young youth to also do that. So.
Wow. So weekends are for weddings, and those can do the wrong.
Caleb, if you allow me, I would like to add some brief remarks to what Maame said. Can I go ahead?
Please do.
Right, thank you. So I think there's this issue that doesn't get much traction in our democratic spaces, but which I believe is one of the groundbreaking areas that if we pay attention to, it will create a big enabling environment for young people. Internet affordability, Caleb. It is so important. If you look at the creativity on YouTube, on Instagram, and other online platforms, you'll be amazed. Internet is a utility in other parts of the world, but if you come to our part in Africa, it's a luxury, and this is one of the present constraints that is significantly affecting youth self-expression and creativity, because people have resorted to entrepreneurship. People no longer look up to government to provide jobs for them. People are doing things on their own. But right now, it has even become expensive for them to fit in with people in other countries that has cheaper internet rates. But unfortunately, we don't talk about this most of the time. Internet affordability is one of the biggest barriers to the full expression of African youth creativity and industry. And it's one area that we have to look at. Very important.
Caleb, I would appreciate a minute for comment.
So much today, Ernest. Azza, you want to make a point?
I will appreciate that, and I hope this is not my last comment. So regarding what Ernest and Maame said, yes, internet affordability is really important. But the key thing, to be honest, is information. In our part of in today's world, information is money. How much information you have determines how much you are able to do. And the point, unfortunately for us, is we can have internet, all right, in our part of the world, but if we don't look for information, if we don't put in active research and search for information. To be honest, we can have all the internet we have in the world, but we'll still be where we are. Look, some time ago, people would have told you that all we need are laws. In Ghana, we have 1,000,001 laws. How many of them are working? How many citizens obey them? So we can, in the same vein, we can have as much internet as possible, but if we don't look for information, it will be very difficult for us to get what we want. And reading is what would get us the information. How many of us read? How many of our youth are encouraged to read? How many public libraries do we have? How many news standpoints do you see young people going to read stuff in newspapers and advertisements and all things like scholarship opportunities and things like that? How many of our youth use their phones to read as much as they can? I'm not saying I'm an angel. Probably I don't do it as well. But this is the point. Searching actively to get information is what would get us to where we are going.
Great. Thank you, Azamati Ebenezer is his name. He is joining us from Oxford. Vincent Edujida, who says the point is that in East Africa, especially Kenya, is amazing. I love to put it. Once you are a young person and you put forth an idea, you are helped to develop it, and the system itself provides the enabling environment for you. However, in Ghana, the story is different. The older generation are afraid of allowing the young ones to progress, so they always make the environment so difficult for young ones to progress. Thank you, Vincent. Others will disagree with you. They say the youth of today, they are lazy. They don't want to work. They don't want to go to school. They don't want to earn what they want. They want to spend out of their means. They want to live a charade. We put out a life that is not true on social media, and we think that everyone else owes us something. Let me come to you. We are about wrapping up. We have just about 6 minutes to go. So on this thought that, the youth in Ghana, things are different here. Those who are there don't want to allow the young ones come up. What's your thought on this, Amazing Grace?
Sorry, Caleb, could you repeat your question?
So Vincent was saying that elsewhere, young people are helped when they are forthcoming or enterprising, yes, basically. But over here, those who are up there for him don't hold the hands of the younger ones to come up with them. And I'm talking about those who also think that our kind of generation is not as hardworking as those who are there now.
I think a lot of times when people make these generalizations that the Ghanaian youth are lazy, are not motivated, and all these things, they are often looking at it from a very narrow prism. Maybe they're assessing it from the people in their own surroundings, and not necessarily because that is the true reflection of the wider Ghanaian society. And even going back to the point Ernest was making about data, like access to affordable data, I think internet access should be treated as a basic human right with the way that the world is going now. Youth can access affordable data to be able to access the information like Azar was speaking about, right? So if you're not creating systems that enable the youth to really put their aspirations into practice, you can't be so surprised when it seems like they are motivated or they don't have any good ideas or any good contributions to make, right? We have created a system where it's very difficult for the youth to penetrate, right? To achieve the things that they hope to achieve. There are so many things standing blocks in their way. It's the same thing when I do gender advocacy. We talk about the standing blocks that are in women's way in gaining access. The whole idea that we don't have the desire, we don't have the drive, it's simply not true. It's not true. We've created a system. We have to think systemically. We've created systems that exclude people. You can't expect that people will just magically turn around and then find opportunities and it will all go for their good. We can point to isolated cases where maybe people have been able to, in spite of the kind of rigid systems we have break through and make it. And sometimes we cling to these examples and think that it's applicable to the general public, but that would be far from truth. We have to actively work to build a society that makes it feasible for everybody to have a fair shot.
Super. We're running out of time, really. Would have loved to engage the various manifestos of some of the political parties. I don't know if we've all taken time to look at them, but let's take time and look at them. Let's observe them very carefully, and let's ask ourselves the quality of attention that the political parties are paying to the youth, to their role in governance, to their role in development. It looks like I see more AstroTurf than anything else for the youth. Parks, football parks are important, but looks like that's just about it for many of the parties. So let's try and interrogate. I'm hoping that we can have a part 2 of this session. I really enjoyed it. But Vincent Dawo is interested in sharing some few thoughts with us. So Vincent, in less than a minute, please share your thoughts with us as we try to wrap up.
So what I want to say is concerning the youth being lazy in Ghana. I believe most of the youth in Ghana here are not that very lazy. They are very hardworking. You see, most of the youth here in Ghana go to other parts of the world. They go to other countries and they do marvelously well. They come back and then you see them doing a whole lot of things when they go out there. Why is it that when they go out there, they progress, but when they're in Ghana, they are not able to progress? That's a question that we need to ask ourselves before we draw that general conclusion as amazing. But elsewhere, once you are a young person and then you bring an idea, as I put it, you realize that you have somebody supporting you. You have the system already put in place things that for instance, in Ghana, as a youth, you are done with uni, you want to start a business, you don't have funds. How do you access interest-free funds? Like, how do you get funds to do your job? You don't get it. But you have funds concentrated at certain people. People are wasting money in this country. But as a young person, you want to invest your money, you want to do something creative. I have a friend that manufactures these woofer electronic gadgets, but he doesn't have anybody to push him to do that.
But Vincent,
And you call that person a lazy person. Yeah.
Vincent, you're his friend. You are there too.
I didn't get you.
I'm saying you're his friend. So if he doesn't have anybody, how are you there?
Myself, I'm in the same shoe as he. So how do we support it?
This is your shoe. I will come and buy it for you. Thank you, Vincent. Thanks for sharing your views with us. We have to wrap up, guys. So we're going to give you all a minute each to share with us.
That is the problem.
Right. Listen, thank you. I get
All
the
right.
problem. I get the problem. So in wrapping up, Azamati, 1 minute. In that order, Amazing Grace, 1 minute. Ernest, 1 minute. And then Maame, 1 minute. What's the most important thing you think that we should be reflecting on and acting on as far as the theme of the youth leadership and governance is concerned?
For me, what is most important is that it's about time to stop accepting things as they are. We should question to know. When we know, we should attempt to explore what we know, and we should attempt to make our exploration productive to society. It should be about thinking about the long term rather than how much we will gain. No, in the long run, we should think about generations and not about situations.
Thank you.
In the long run, we should pursue things that will lead to the change of system, because all the problems we've talked about now, everything is systemic. The system has to be overturned, it has to be changed, it has to be overhauled, and indeed, we have to make sure we have a new system in place that takes into consideration all we aspire to get in life. When we have the system changed, there's one thing we need to change, because a system cannot operate on its own. A system will be operated by people. The people would have to have an attitudinal change. It is only when we have a properly overhauled system with a people that have the great attitude to man that system that we can see ourselves at the top of the mountain where we want to see ourselves. Thanks for the great honor, Danny. I'm grateful.
Azamati is a student of classical realism at the University College of Oxford. Thank you, Aza. We are glad you joined us. So yes, the next was going to be Amazing Grace.
Okay, yes. So for me, it's quite simply center young people in all decision making, in all policy formulation. Everything that we do in this country needs to put the people who will be most impacted over generations at the center, including those who are also marginalized in other ways, be it along gender lines, class lines, people with disabilities, whatever it may be. Keep people and not necessarily the economic figures and GDP at the core of what you do for this country and in governing it. It should be about social welfare, society's well-being, and everybody's general output in the long run.
Thank you, Amazing Grace. That was lovely. Let's hear you, Ernest, and then we'll come to Maame.
Well, I believe we are all leaders. We have to take our destiny into our own hands. And there was this brilliant research that was done by this psychologist called Howard Gardner, who shared this theory about multiple intelligences. And I believe in a society that values grammar education above everything else, it is time young people assert their self-confidence. They marshal and mobilize their self-confidence and explore and create and be unapologetic about sharing their work. In these days, there are several mediums, platforms for them to share their work, what you can do, what you can create. Don't act as a victim. Don't wait for government. Don't wait for the president. Don't wait for your MP. Don't wait for your DC. Take your life into your own hands and move forward. One other thing that I would like to propose to the civil society community is I've heard about this CSO report called Matters of Concern to Ghanaians. It's a brilliant report. I think it has become important to do disaggregated editions to better respond to youth segments. So for example, it will be interesting if we can have Matters of Concern to Ghanaian youth that will address all the issues that Ghanaian youth faces, and which will also speak to the policy issues that will be of interest to Ghanaian youth. So yes, let's take our lives into our own hands. And I believe we're already making good progress. With time, we'll amplify it. Awesome. And thanks for this opportunity to the CDD team and for your wonderful moderation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernest. Maame, finally.
Finally, so I'll just say that sometimes you want to be on the path. They say that the road less taken. Unfortunately, sometimes it's hard to find a new road to even take. But I think that we should be the ones to create that road. And once upon a time, when independence was just a dream for Ghanaians, people got up and said, you know what, we'll make this a reality. So sometimes you don't have to wait for anyone to give that to you, but know that you have the power enough to make that change. And the journey to becoming great or doing something great is not easy. There'll be obstacles, but we keep pushing. The change will first of all begin with each of us looking in the mirror and saying that, how can I do things differently? So that's what I want to leave with us. Thank you.
Let's do this again. Thank you, CDD. Thanks for having us. My name is Caleb Kudah. I work with 97.3 City FM and City TV. I look forward to having another time with you and for all the young ones out there. I mean, we're all young, are we not? I mean, if you have any great idea out there, you've heard it, don't wait. And if there's any way possible we can assist, please reach us and let's do this together. Thank you. Well, that's
Thank you, Caleb.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you.